येन तस्मै श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्णा. So welcome everyone back. So we will continue our theme of second chapter, whatever verses were pending. So we begin as always with this verse of Sripad Yamunacharya, summary of the second chapter. So this is verse number 6 from the Gita-artha Sangraha, where he summarizes the second chapter. So I'm just reading that verse out, and I believe it is on the screen as well. Nityatma sanga karme gocharaha sankhya yogadihi dvitiye stitadhi laksha prokta tan moha shante. So I like these verses because I found them to be very, very eloquent. You know, as we read in that definition of eloquence, essential truth spoken concisely is eloquence. The definition we read in CC. So you see here a very eloquent definition or a summary of a chapter. You know, it kind of, it's quite attractive for me to see how someone could summarize an entire chapter so nicely in a Sanskrit verse. So just look at this, Nityatma. That means what are things Krishna is talking in the second chapter? Nitya Atma, how the Atma is eternal. That is how he starts. Then Asanga Karme Gochara. Asanga Karme means what? Because the Atma is eternal, don't be attached to body and external situations, and hence to Nishkama Karma. So please try to understand, there is a connection, correct? In the second chapter, Krishna initially speaks about how Atma is eternal, Nitya Atma, and because of that, what you should do? Not that you have to stop working. Oh, Atma is eternal, body is temporary, so better I don't do anything with the body. No. Atma is eternal, hence don't worry so much about whatever problems come in the world. It is going to happen. Hence, Asanga Karme Gocharaha. Stick to Nishkama Karma Yoga. Sankhya Yoga Dhihi. So, 3 topics. So, there is Sankhya in the first part of the second chapter. Yoga means Karma Yoga in the middle part of the second chapter. Dhihi means this Jnana Yoga, Dhihi, intelligent, you know, that Sthita Dhir Muni, you know, that Dhihi. In the last part of the second chapter, correct? So second chapter of Bhagavad Gita has 3 parts. Sankhya Yoga till 30, then there is Karma Yoga in the middle, and from 2.54 onwards, Krishna is talking about Sthita Dhihi. You know, so that is Dhihi. Dvitiye, second chapter, Sthita Dhi Laksha. And what is the goal of the second chapter? In some way, the goal is to become a Sthita Dhir Muni. Correct? Prokta, this is spoken by Krishna, Tan Moha Shantaye, in order to dispel all the Moha, illusion of Arjuna. So such a beautiful way, you know, we can, I mean, this verse is like you can make the whole second chapter into a picture in your mind, and you can see these various topics that are flowing between each other, right? So we are basically, by the way, in the 41st verse. So till last time we had done the 40th verse. So they're starting from 41st. Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kurunandana bahushaka hyanantascha buddhayo avyavasayina. So we all know that this is a very, very considered a very important shloka. You know, those of us who have read and understood Prabhupada's purport, we also understand how this verse has given a lot of inspiration to several devotees as well, Vaishnavas. Right? Vyavasayatmika buddhi, to be fixed. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport we know in this context. About him saying that be Vyavasayatmika in your guru's instructions and so on. Let's have a look at what Ramanujacharya has to say here. Right? So he's saying, O Arjuna, descendant of the Gurus, in this matter regarding Karma Yoga, that knowledge which stems from the understanding of the true nature of Jivatma is one. Okay, since the sole aim of all karmas is liberation alone, For the people who have not understood the true nature of Jivatma and therefore desire worldly pleasures, the disposition of mind regarding karma are endless, as worldly desire are endless, and each desire in turn has multitudes of subparts for other objectives. Okay, so this is how he's defining this verse. So let's try to understand what he's saying here. So Ramanujacharya, as we have discussed earlier, he speaks about all these verses from Karma Yoga perspective, because his point is that this is Karma Yoga section. So as we have discussed many times, please remember, such verses apply to Bhakti Yoga as well. We know that, right? They apply to Bhakti Yoga, but they apply to Karma Yoga also. So how they apply to Bhakti Yoga, perhaps most of us have understood, since we have done Bhakti Shastri, etc. Let's try to understand how they apply to Karma Yoga also. Okay, so what is Ramanuja saying here? So he's saying that a person who is fixed in Karma Yoga, okay, who is Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, a person who has decided that I want to do Karma Yoga, for such a person, what happens is his aim is one. Okay, that means he does Karma Yoga with only one aim. What is his aim? His aim is moksha, because that is how Karma Yoga is, right? The purpose of Karma Yoga is to help you go beyond this world, to achieve moksha, right? Now that moksha can be impersonal, personal, whatever. But from Karma Yoga perspective, the purpose of that is to help you go beyond this world. So that is why he's saying that this Vyavasaya, the person who is Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, Ekeha, he has understood, because he wants to do Karma Yoga, his goal is one. But for the other people means those who are not Karma Yogis and who have not understood the nature of Jivatma and who want to enjoy worldly pleasures. So please try to understand, the Karma Yogi is not interested in enjoying this world. He is interested in doing whatever is to be done as per Karma Yoga, right? So Nishkama is a part of it, right? So Nishkama means worldly enjoyment is not figuring in his idea, right? So such a person, he is saying that because his Buddhaya is Ananta, because worldly desires are endless, and he is kind of distracted here and there, Bahushaka, he is, having multitudes of desires, etc. So this is how Ramanujacharya is explaining this particular verse, right? So I think this can be very easily understood. So here one point Ramanuja says here is, in his commentary, that there are three types of karma. So this is a little technical, but please try to understand, because this will help us in understanding the future verses. Right. So the first type of karma is called as so there is nitya karma. There is something called nitya karma. There is something called naimittika karma, and there is something called kamya karma. Okay. So in the Vedas, three types of karmas are spoken: nitya karma, naimittika karma, and kamya karma. So as these words suggest, they have a simple meaning. Nitya karma means something that is mandatory, which has to be done literally daily. Okay, like a Brahmana has to do Sandhya daily. So that is considered Nitya Karma. Daily he has to do. And Nitya Karma, you can also extend Nitya Karma in the understanding here in a broader sense, that according to Varnashrama, you will have some things to do. Right? Like a woman has to cook in the kitchen. Okay, so that is kind of becomes her Nitya Karma. She has to do that daily. So it is not something that she can give up. Or like a Kshatriya, like Arjuna, he has to fight, he has to protect his kingdom, he has to do the duties of a Kshatriya, right? So that he has to do, he cannot come out of. So there is something called Nitya Karma. Then there is something called Naimittika Karma for everybody. Naimittika Karma means like an eclipse is there, or once a while something is to be done. So there are some rituals or samskaras which are Naimittika, which you may do, like somebody does Kanyadan. So that is Naimittika. It's not like every day you're not getting your daughter married, but once a while that will come. So that is. There is a third thing called Kamya Karma. Kamya Karma is for desires. Like somebody wants heavenly planets. Correct? So for that, there is a yajna in the Veda. Correct? You do that yajna, then you can Jyotishtoma yajna or some yajna. Then you can go to the heavenly planets and so on. Okay, so there are Kamya Karma also mentioned in the Vedic scriptures for all Varnas, right? For everybody, all these three things exist. Okay, so the Ramanuja, what he says here is, what we understand from second chapter of Gita, the way Krishna is instructing Arjuna is, Nitya and Naimittika karma are mandatory for everybody. Kamya karma is optional. Okay, so Arjuna as a Kshatriya, he has to fight. He cannot say that I will not do the duties of a Kshatriya. No, these are some daily duties of a Kshatriya. Of course, daily duty is not fighting, but daily duty is protection, rakshana, administration, all that he has to do. the politics in related to it, so on. Similarly, a Brahmana, Vaishya, a woman, everybody will have something which they have to do as per their varnashram situation. That is nitya. You have to do that. Okay, but kamya karma, he says, is optional. Okay, so it is not necessary that so because there are so many things mentioned in the Vedas, right? So Vedas are not only talking about prescribed duties for every varna, they are also speaking about optional duties, like how you can go to heaven and so on. So that is optional, so a devotee may do it or may not do it. So he says, even if a devotee wants to do some kamya karma, he can do it and he can offer that to Krishna. Okay, so just like Yudhishthir Maharaj does a Rajasuya Yajna, right? Rajasuya Yajna. So generally such things are done for heavenly pleasures or many other reasons it is done. But Yudhishthir Maharaj did it, because he wanted to please Krishna. He did it because his ancestors, Pandu Maharaj was stuck or whatever, and Jarasandha had to be conquered. Multiple reasons. But Yudhishthir Maharaj did not do such yajnas thinking that I want to go to the heaven and enjoy. But the point is, he nevertheless did it also. Okay, so basically, what Ramanujacharya explains here is that a karma yogi who is there, whatever he does, he will never do it from that selfish purpose perspective that he wants to enjoy the fruits of that for himself. He is doing it as an offering to Krishna. Okay, he does it in service to Krishna. He does it and he offers the fruits to Krishna or whatever. So like that he does it. But the point is, he does it. It is not that he gives them up. Okay, he may give up some kamya karma, because kamya karma are very vast in the Vedas. Because the Vedas, there are so many things mentioned about how one can do certain yajnas and get some nice benefits and go to some heavens and all that. So everything may not even be possible for a devotee to do, or he may not even be keen on doing that. So that's fine. So the kamya karma part is fine. But otherwise, he has to do everything. But his vyavasayatmika buddhi, his focus is one. So the actions may be many, but his focus is one. And what is his focus? His focus is liberation. Okay, because he's a yogi. Yogi means karma yogi. Once you put the word yogi, it means liberation is the goal. The goal is not to enjoy the fruits and kind of be like that. So that is how this verse is being discussed. So this is the only one difference. Otherwise, many things that he says are again in things that we have heard and understood from Srila Prabhupada's purports as well. So that part I'm not repeating. So because these verses can also be understood from Bhakti Yoga perspective, and they can also be understood from Karma Yoga perspective. So I'm only speaking about the Karma Yoga part here, correct? Because that part is differential, something that we haven't discussed or learned earlier. Right. So now going on. So now there is a logical connection between all the verses. So please try to appreciate the logical connection. So after having spoken this, Krishna, what he wants to say is, somebody may say, Are Vedas are saying, so many things, right? Do this, do that, and so on. So if a person actually goes into all the Vedas, then what happens to such a person? So Krishna speaks 2.42-43. I'm reading both the verses together. Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadantyavi paschitaha Vedavad Radhapartha Nanya Dastiti Vadana Kamatmana Swargapara Janma Karma Falapradam Kriya Vishesha Pahulam Bhogeshwarya Gatim Prati. Okay, so these two are together, right? So these verses are spoken by Krishna to say that yes, it is a fact that Vedas are talking so many things. Okay, so what happens is, if somebody is not interested in moksha, okay, somebody is not a yogi. See, till now we are talking about yogi, we are talking about karma yoga, but now somebody is not interested in karma yoga. That means he's not a yogi. So when you say a person is not a yogi, then the immediate understanding that he's a bhogi. He's someone who wants to enjoy things for himself. So then Krishna is putting that word of caution. So such a person, what happens to such a person is, when he's connected with the Vedas, etc., he simply gets carried away. He gets carried away with what? Pushpitam vacham, with all these flowery words. Okay, so Ramanujacharya's translation is very similar to what we have read from Srila Prabhupada's translation. It's almost the same. Only the second verse I'm reading here. That speech which looks very flowery. Flowery means, he says, which means it is only attractive at first sight, not upon investigation. So that is how Pushpitam is being discussed. That means very attractive initially. That's why it is called flowery. Attractive. So Ramanuja goes on to say that it is like hibiscus flower. This hibiscus flower, if you know anything about the hibiscus flower, it seems it doesn't give a fruit. Okay, so I was not knowing this, but he says that a hibiscus flower doesn't give fruit. So there are some flowers like this. They look very attractive. They look very big, red in color, very attractive. But then it doesn't give a fruit. Okay, so similarly, he says there are these so many Vedic injunctions which are kamya karma. So these are all talking about the kamya karma. Yamimam pushpitam vacha means kamya karma. So all these things which are there, pravadanti means what? They very strongly speak. It says pravadanti. Vadanti means to speak. Pravadanti means they not only speak, they very strongly speak. And what do they very strongly speak? They strongly speak kamatmanaha. They address those who are desiring enjoyment, and swargapara, those who want to go to the heavens. Right? Kriya Vishesha Bahula means those involved in Kamya Karma are only Kriya Vishesha Bahula means they are full of actions where there is no intellectual component of observing these actions. So please try to understand. See this last phrase which is there, na Kriya Vishesha Bahula. We are discussing that. So what he's saying here is these Vedic injunctions or methods which are there to go to heaven, etc. These are only full of actions. Kriya Vishesha, both action है उसमें. ये करो, ये यज्ञ करो, ये दान करो, ये करो, करो. But there is no intellectual component to the observation of these actions. Because if somebody were to become intellectually start analyzing these actions, why I'm doing these actions, what will I get after going to heaven? Is heaven a permanent place? If he starts thinking all that, then he cannot do these actions. Okay, so it is just like materialistic things you can do only when you don't analyze them too much, right? If you start analyzing something too much, फिर मजा चला जाता है उसमें. So similarly, saying here Kriya Vishesha Bahula means it's only having Kriya. बहुत सारा कार्य करना पड़ता है, यज्ञ, this, that. उसमें action बहुत है, but there is no intellectual component to it. One is not analyzing why one is doing all this, right? And Bhogeshwarya Gatim Prati. Right, so this is this. So Krishna is now talking about who is not a karma yogi but who is connected to the Vedas. Correct. So such a person he is talking about. Apahrita chetasam and all that. Apahrita means mind is stolen and so on. So okay. So then of course Krishna continues this theme in 44th verse also, in the famous verse Bhogeshwarya prasaktanam taya apahrita chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadho na vidiyate. So now Krishna is talking about who does not reach 2.41 Bhagavad Gita, right? For those whose mind has been carried away by such speech, who are engrossed in the enjoyments of worldly pleasures such as Swarga, the previously stated intellect for Karma Yoga, which arises through the realization of true nature of Jivatma, is never born in the mind. Okay, for such people, it is not born. So those who are carried away by this Vedavada, for them, that doesn't come. So Ramanuja is distinguishing the karmi from the karma yogi. So 2.41 is talking about karma yogi, and 42, 43, 44 are talking about the karmi. Karmi means this is Vedic karmi, not the karmi like we use in the context of a sense gratifier in a modern. This is like a person who is doing all kamya karma to go to heaven. He's talking about such a person. Such a person is being addressed here like this, right? So now at this point, a question comes to the mind. Okay, the question that comes to the mind is, if all these things are, if one may doubt if Krishna is not speaking so favorably about Kamya Karma, then why do Vedas speak only about this in the first place? Correct? So there's an obvious question that can come. If Krishna is not so favorable about these type of yajnas, then Vedas should not speak about it. Why does it speak about it? So that gets answered in the next verse, where we understand that the Vedas are for all types of people, right? Because it's a more bigger tree which covers too many people. Traigunya Vishya Veda, Nistragunyo Bhavarjuna, Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvasto, Niryoga Kshema Atmavan. Okay, so he's talking now about why Vedas talk about this. So here there is a very, very interesting way he has translated this. I'll read the translation, then we'll discuss. Hey Arjun, the Vedas state what is beneficial for people dominated by any of the three modes, but you do not give room to all the three gunas. Become one who endures dualities like happiness, sorrow, gain, loss, victory, defeat. Become one in whom Sattva guna grows daily without aiming at acquisition and protection of things for material welfare, and be situated in realizing the true nature of Jivatma. Okay, so this is how the translation is. So there is some important part of this translation. So what he says is Nistre Gunyo. When he says Nistre Gunyo, one way of looking at Nistre Gunyo is go beyond the three moods, correct? So that is how we know it. That's one way. But the way he defines here Nistre Gunyo is, he says Nistre Gunyo doesn't mean go beyond all three. It means those don't get affected by Rajo and Tamo Guna. So that is also Nistre Gunyo. So he's giving an example. He says, just like, suppose we say, those without three fruits should come here in front of me, then those with one fruit can come, correct? So it doesn't mean that when you say those without the three fruits, sorry, suppose if somebody says those without three fruits, please come here, it doesn't mean that person should not have any of the three. It means he can have one of them, but still he is also counted that he doesn't have, the three fruits. So Nistre Gunyo means he says don't give room to all the three gunas. So why does he say that? Because the next line is Nitya Sattvasto. Nitya Sattvasto means in one whom Sattva Guna is prominent. So Ramanuja translates this verse by saying that don't get affected by all the three gunas, rather become situated primarily in Sattva Guna. Okay, Nitya Sattvasto, try to be in Sattva Guna always. Okay, so this is an instruction which Krishna is giving, that the Vedas are for all three people. But then a yogi who is there, a karma yogi who is there, he gives prominence to Sattva Guna. He is not, he doesn't get carried away by the Rajo Tamo Guna, the lower modes. And he's not bound by dualities also. Right? So that part is again emphasized here. In fact, we are going to talk about this duality thing a little bit more as well. But that is again spoken here. Nirdvandvo. So many times Krishna has spoken, but he's again speaking. Nir yoga kshema atmavan. To get something and protect what one has is yoga and kshema. To get something is yoga, and to protect that is kshema. So without too much being affected by that, nir means without bothering about these things, becomes fixed in atma. Right? So this is what Krishna is speaking. Then Krishna is expanding the 2.45, right? Because somebody may say, Vedas is talking about so many things. What am I supposed to do? Okay, so that's the next verse. Yavan artha udapane sarvata samplutodage tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanatah. Again, very interesting translation. He says, from a lake full of water from all sides, one who is thirsty will use only that much water as would be beneficial to him. That means a person, when he goes to the lake, he will not drink all the water. Jitna usko chahiye, utna hi lega. In the same manner, to a Vaidika who follows the Vedas, who is knowledgeable and a mumukshu, from the entire Vedas, for attaining moksha, whatever portion is needed, only that much he will accept and practice. Okay, so beautifully, this translation, what it indicates is, it's a continuation of the previous point. The Vedas are containing so many things. Okay, it is like a lake with so much of water. But just like a person who is thirsty, he only drinks what he wants and he goes away. Similarly, he says a mumukshu, that means one who is desirous of transcendence, because Gita is considered as a moksha shastra, something that is addressing a mumukshu. Okay, one who is wanting liberation, and then later one who wants the spiritual kingdom, love of God, and whatever. Okay, so such a person from the entire Vedas, what he will do? He will take only those things which he needs, which are necessary for his practice. He's not going to take everything. Okay, so the same concept has been hammered, right? If you remember, we were talking that Kamya Karma part, he may not accept. Okay, which talks about how to go to heavens and all that. He may not be interested in that. Now at this point, Ramanujacharya raises a question. After hearing all this, our Arjuna, what he can potentially feel here now is, he can feel that, if the whole goal is mumukshu only, if the whole goal is moksha and so on, then why should I do even the karma of a Brahman Kshatriya? See, this is where, there is a very important balancing to be done. Please try to understand this. Krishna started this discussion in 2.41. Today we started by talking about how the karma yogi who is there, he has to be fixed on his goal. He is not wavering. He doesn't become like this fellow who is greedy and who is a kamya karmi, who does so many things to go to heaven and so on. His intelligence is not stolen and it is not distracted by bhoga, ishwarya and so on. And Vedas are for many, many people, but the mumukshu takes only that much water from the Vedic river, lake, whatever he needs, and he walks off. And all this Krishna spoke. Now, on hearing this immediately, what are the questions that can come to Arjuna's mind? Arjuna can think, Arey Baba, if moksha only is the goal, then why should I even do the karma of a Brahmana and a Kshatriya? Now, that is also unnecessary, right? Better give up everything. Because that's what Arjuna wanted, correct? Arjuna wanted to give up the duty of a Kshatriya itself. So that is it. So what happens is sometimes, as they say in English, you throw the baby also along with the bathtub water, correct? So when you are saying that so many things in the Vedas are there, everything is not applicable to us, then somebody may say, "Arey, फिर कुछ भी apply मत करो ना, हमको छोड़ दो इसमें से, मुक्त कर दो." No, but Krishna is saying, no, that is not possible. There is so much of nitya karma which is mandatory. You have to do that. So the karma of a Brahman, Kshatriya, all these things which are there, right? You cannot say that I will not do that also. That you cannot say. You cannot escape from that. See, Krishna so intelligently is bringing back. He's saying what things are outside which are not needed for you, but there the worry is the most important thing may also go away. Somebody may think I have understood the Gita's knowledge, right? I'm not the body, I'm the soul, all this. Why should I even do all this fighting and all these things? Let me just give up everything. So this tendency is very strong. And this tendency was obviously there in Arjuna, correct? That's why the whole Bhagavad Gita conversation only started. So that is why Krishna wants to say that, see, Nitya karma cannot be avoided. Kamya karma you may give up. You may say, I don't want to go to heaven. I will not do the sacrifices meant for that. But there are some things which everybody has to do. Okay, as a Kshatriya, you have to rule, you have to protect. Part of that, time to time, you have to fight. That becomes like a Naimittika. Time to time, there will be wars that will come up. Nitya Naimittika karma, you cannot escape from that. You cannot say, अभी मेरे को ये भी नहीं करने का. I have understood moksha is the goal. सब कुछ छोड़ के जाता हूँ. ये नहीं चलेगा. Right? So Krishna is bringing him back. Correct? So what is Krishna now saying? The famous verse 2.47. Karmanyavadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturgur mate sangostva karmani. To you who are a mumukshu, look at the translation. To you who are a mumukshu, rights are given only in performing prescribed works. That means nitya naimittika karma you have to do. Okay, that you cannot run away from. You should not have any attachment for attaining the paltry benefits like swarga declared for such karmas. Okay, so by doing the duty of a Kshatriya or a Brahmana, there are some fruits mentioned, right? Like if you are a Kshatriya and you give up your life in the battle, you can go to the heavens. Or you are a Brahmana, you lead your life religiously like a Brahmana for so many lifetimes, you can become a Brahma or something like that. Don't get attached to that. But you cannot give up that. That is what Krishna is saying. Do not become the cause of karma and the cause of the fruits of karma. You should not have attachment in the non-performance of the activities which are aimed at attaining moksha. So please try to understand, right? You cannot be attached to the non-performance of the activity. वो भी तुमको करना पड़ेगा. Okay, so Nitya Naimittika karma, Krishna is not saying that you can give it up. So all Krishna said was, so this is why we built that whole theme of Nitya karma, Naimittika karma, Kamya karma. So only those things in the Vedas which are Kamya karma, you may not do. But other things you have to do. As a Kshatriya, you have some duties to do. You cannot say you will not do that. Okay, so that is why Krishna is saying, Karmanya eva. Eva means what? Only. Only means the duty has to be done. That means what is left out, phala. Phala, you can leave it out. Okay, so that part is left out. The third line, Krishna is saying that, okay, so Krishna is basically talking in this verse. It's such a beautiful verse, actually. We can keep just looking at this verse, meditating on this verse so much. Nishkama karma yoga is there. Ma karma phala heturbur. Not thinking that you are the cause of karma. Why Krishna is saying this? See, all this is going to get explained in the third chapter. Since we have already discussed that, I can mention here. Correct? See, karmanyavadikaraste means you have to do nitya naimittika karma. Ma phaleshu kadachana means nishkama karma. Ma karma phala heturbur means you are not the doer. So this concept Krishna has elaborated so much, right? We have already studied in third chapter, fifth chapter. Like 3.27, Krishna is saying, right? Everything is done by the three modes of nature. Then in the fifth chapter also Krishna is saying, be the observer. Remember, we have discussed this in great detail. Krishna is talking about how you are breathing, you are doing all these things. You just learn to be an observer. You are not the doer. Going from the doer consciousness to observer consciousness. So that is what it means by ma karma phala heturbur. Don't think that you are the doer, because Akratratva anusandhanam, as Ramanuja says. The gunas are doing everything, you are not doing anything. And last line, that is kind of topping up everything. Why should I do karma when I don't get resource? Because somebody may say after hearing the first three lines, first line Krishna is saying do karma, second line Krishna is saying fruits are not yours, third line Krishna is saying you are not the cause of the fruit also. Then somebody may say, Arey, why should I do it only? Kyun karu main? If I am not the cause of the fruit and if I am not the doer, then why should I do the action itself? Do it for moksha. That's the point. Mate sangostva karmani. So akarma is coming there. Na? Mate sangostu akarmani. Akarma means we know. Na? Akarma means do it as akarma. That means do it for releasing you from the bondage. Do it with the purpose of moksha. Okay, so please try to understand. Such a beautiful verse. Krishna is making everything clear here, right? And the same concept is going to be elaborated. We are going to spend some time discussing this verse as well. But before that, I'll just take the 48, 49 as well, and then we will go into the discussion of this. Okay. So if you see the next verse now, Krishna is, next verse again, Krishna is continuing. Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. O Dhananjaya, abandoning attachment to kingdom and relatives and remaining equipoised in success and failure, being established in yoga, perform the prescribed duties. This evenness of mind in dualities is called yoga. Okay, amazing verse again, right? So what is Krishna saying? Samatvam yoga uchyate, samatva yoga. So in fact, Ramanuja calls this as one yoga only, samatva yoga. Samatva yoga means looking at things sama. And if you remember, we have discussed already the 3rd to 6th chapter. So much about samatva yoga is being spoken, right? Krishna is speaking about 3 types of samatva. Like in 5.18 and in 6.9 Bhagavad Gita, he talks about looking at people equally. We have discussed all those verses, right? Look at your friend, look at your enemy, all that equally. Look at a dog eater, that part. Then Krishna talk about objects like stone, pebble, gold. Look at that equally. Then situations like happiness, distress, different things that come. So this is samatva yoga. So the nishkama, one of the goal of nishkama karma is to become samatva yogi. Samatva yogi means to not be affected too much, correct? The political party that we like, sometimes they win elections, and as we saw today, sometimes they lose elections. Hota rehta hai ye sab, right? So all these things keep happening. But still one has to be steady. One cannot get affected too much by any situation. Right. So this is the crux of this chapter, which Krishna is speaking again. Okay, why is Krishna repeating the samatvam so much? Because it is so important in Karma Yoga, right? Not to jump too much in happiness and not to lament too much in distress. Okay, so here also Krishna is speaking. So in Ramanujacharya, he quotes one Vedic verse, beautiful verse. This is Upakarma Upasamharo Abhyasa Apurvata Phalam Arthavada Uppapati Cha Lingam Tatparye Nirnaya. So he says that when you study any scripture, there are many ways to understand what is the important part of that scripture. Samjho aap ek chapter padh rahe ho, you are reading Bhagavatam some chapter, Bhagavad Gita some chapter, and you want to understand which is the important part of this chapter or what is the essence of this chapter. So how can you understand what is the essence or what is the importance of this chapter? There is this verse, Upakarma. Upakarma means what is there in the beginning you see. Upasamhara, what is there in the end of the chapter you see. Abhyasa, that means again and again what is being spoken about you see. Abhyasa means barbar. Apurvata, what is unique teaching in that chapter you see. Unique teaching, apurvata. Phalam, okay, what is the teaching that gives the phala? There will be something, if you do this, then you will get this. That is phala. Then arthavada, what is being glorified by that teaching. Upapatti, what kind of examples are given in the chapter. Lingam tatparya nirnaya. From this we can understand tatparya nirnaya. Tatparya nirnaya means what is the goal of that chapter can be understood. So you read any chapter, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, anything you read, Prabhupada's book you're reading, these are the various things one has to note to understand the essence. Then Ramanujacharya says, if you look at 2nd chapter Bhagavad Gita, then you know this concept, na abhyasa. Abhyasa matlab jo bar bola gaya hai. What is being said repeatedly. Okay, so Ramanuja says repeatedly what is being said is you have to give up duality. samatvam. This duality concept is what has been repeated again and again in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, second chapter. Okay, so in fact, I'm just currently just going back in the chapter. That part maybe I haven't done recently, but still I will just speak of that. So, this in the second chapter, 12, 13, 14, 15, this from 12th to 15th verse. Ramanujacharya calls that as the Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana of full Karma Yoga only. Because that is where Krishna starts speaking, right? So if you see in the 12th verse, what does Krishna say? We all know that verse. Natve vaham jatunasham natvam nime janadipa nachevana bhavishyamaha sarve vayamataparam. So in that verse, Krishna is basically saying, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these things, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. That verse, Krishna, Ramanuja says, is Prayojana. Why that verse is called Prayojana? Because that verse, which is there, 2.10 Bhagavad Gita, is asking us to be situated on the platform of Atma. You understood? It is, that verse is telling us that, hey, come on, don't be stuck with thinking that you are the body. Come to understand the goal of Sankhya is to reach the platform of Atma. So that is why Prayojana is spoken first. So Ramanuja, what he says is among Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana, many times first Prayojana has to be spoken. Then only Sambandha and Abhideya is spoken. And then again you can speak Prayojana in the end. Because if you don't speak Prayojana, then the person may not get enthused so much. Okay, about what is to be done. So Ramanujacharya gives an example. He says, once upon a time, there was a disciple who went to a guru and said that I want moksha, please help me, please instruct me. So the gurus gave an entire program from morning 4 o'clock to night 11 o'clock, it seems, about what all you should do. You should get up, take bath, this japa you should do, this kind of dhyana, this kind of puja, this time you should read scripture. Till night 11 o'clock, whatever he has to do, he told him. And then he said, if you do this daily for many years, you will get moksha. The fellow got scared. He went to another guru and he asked the same question. I want moksha. Please tell me what should I do. So the guru told him, do you know what is moksha? That person said, I don't know. He said, then the guru, what he did, he described entire Vaikuntha to him. How the spiritual world is, how the Lord welcomes the Atma back when the conditioned soul, when he goes back to the spiritual world. Like in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, there is that beautiful picture, which I like very much, of Krishna embracing Gopakumar. If you see such a painting and you just think about it, how God welcomes, Krishna welcomes us back to the spiritual world. So that thing the Guru described to the disciple, Vaikuntha, how it is, how the Lord welcomes back the devotee when he goes back to Godhead and all that. He described in great detail, half an hour, 1 hour, he gave a class only, how mukti is in the spiritual world. Then this person became very enthusiastic. He said, oh, please tell me, how can I get that? Then this guru said the same thing which the first guru said. Get up in the morning at 4 o'clock and then you have to take bath, to do this puja, do this dhyan, do this japa, read the scriptures for so many hours every day, do dana, all that thing till night 11 o'clock. Then now, but this fellow was ready. So he says, similarly, you need to, like a lady, first she sees a child. She sees many people are having babies. And then when he sees somebody's baby, then she understands, "Arey, this is so attractive. It's so nice that even if I have a baby like this." Okay, and then she is willing to undergo the 9-month labor process. Correct? So this is how Prayojana is to be stated first. Because Prayojana is stated first, then you become enthusiastic for the Abhideya, Sambandha, etc. Right? So similarly, he says here, 2.12, Krishna has said, Natve Vaham Jatunasam, because that is Prayojana. Be situated on the level of Atma and don't think you are this body. Then the question is, how do you achieve it? Okay, so there is Abhideya for that. And for that, he says is the next two verses. Dehinosminita dehe kaumaram yoganam jara satta dehantara praptis dhiras tatrana muchyati. Okay, and then matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha agama apayino nityastam titikshasa bharata. These two verses, Ramanuja says is, these verses are describing the process. What is the process? Tolerate the duality of this world. Okay, that means do your duty in this world, tolerating the dualities. And then again in the 14th verse, what is spoken? Again, Prayojana is spoken at the end. Yeah? Yam hina vyatayante te purusham purusharsava sama sukha dukha dhinam so amritatvaya kalpate. You get such a person is eligible for liberation, correct? So if you see those verses, Sambandha is also there because Krishna is speaking about you are not the body, you are the soul in that Dehi Nosmin verse and all that. So 2.13 is talking about Sambandha. 2.14 is talking about Abhideya. The process is what? To tolerate and keep doing whatever one is doing. And what is the goal? The goal is mentioned Atma Sakshatkar and liberation. Okay, so in the beginning, Prayojan is mentioned, then Sambandha Abhideya is mentioned, again Prayojan is mentioned. So Prayojan becomes like a sandwich to Sambandha and Abhideya, so that we are enthused to do what we are doing. Anyway, so the why I went to those verses is because here I wanted to say that as this particular verse I quoted here, right? That Upakarma, Upasamharo, Abhyasa, Apurvata Phalam, Artavada, Upatti, Chalingam, Tatparya Nirnaya. If you want to understand what has been said in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, see the beginning of second chapter, Krishna's instructions. Krishna started by talking about duality, tolerating. In the middle of the second chapter, what is Krishna talking again? Tolerating duality. If you remember, 2.38 was also tolerating duality. Sukha dukkha samay kritva labha labha jaya jaya. Similarly, this 2.49 is also about what? Tolerating duality. And in the end of the second chapter, where Krishna talks about the 2.56 and all that, right? Dukkeshu nudvignamana sukeshu vigataspriha. We have discussed those verses also. There also Krishna is saying tolerate it. So that means beginning, middle, end. Krishna is talking means Ramanujacharya says the whole purpose of this chapter is to tell you that do your things in the world, tolerating the duality of this world. Okay, so this he says is the essence of the second chapter, which we understand, because Krishna is talking the same thing, beginning, middle, and end. मतलब किसी व्यक्ति ने बार बार अगर वही चीज बोला है, so we can understand. Okay, so now we will go into a little bit of discussion on this particular theme, and then we will end. Okay, so this going Prabhu, he makes this point. He says this Nishkama Karma. Why is Krishna emphasizing so much in the second chapter? Like all these verses are Nishkama Karma only, na? Why is Krishna emphasizing? Because this is the way to go to Nishkinchana Bhakti. Okay, so we all, as devotees of Krishna, we all want to go to Nishkinchana Bhakti, but Nishkama Karma is a foundation for Nishkinchana Bhakti. Okay, because if there is no Nishkama in our karma, then Nishkinchana Bhakti becomes impossible. Why like that? Because what he says is there are two things. One is in Bhakti, when we say, so basically, there are, like in the world in general, when we do anything, there are expectations, and sometimes the expectation becomes into an obsession, correct? We become very obsessed about something. So what happens is there is something that we believe and there is something that we feel, right? We believe in something and we feel something. So there is a gap between the two. So one has to be patient, correct? Like Bhakti also, if you say, there is something that we believe in, like Bhakti, how it should be. If we chant the holy name of God, what should happen to us? We read in the Bhagavatam, if you chant the holy name, your throat should get choked, your hair should stand on and tears should come from our eyes. This is what we believe from the scriptures. But then what we feel when we are actually sitting and chanting, we feel sleepy most of the time. Okay, so there is a huge gap between what we believe or what is our aspiration and what we are actually feeling right now. There is a gap, right? The scriptures is saying that when you chant the holy name, tears should fall from your eyes. And here, when I'm chanting, I'm sleeping only. I'm feeling asleep. I'm getting bored. I'm thinking when my japa will get over or whatever, right? So there is a gap. Okay. So he says that, so how do you manage that? So as a training to manage that, first is Nishkama Karma. Because in the world itself, when we work, there also there is a gap. Okay, so you are doing something, right? So whatever we are doing, there is a gap sometimes between what we have done, for which purpose we did it, or what we thought will happen, or what is generally the purpose of that action, and what actually happens. There is a big gap between that. Okay. So Nishkama Karma Yoga teaches you in your day-to-day life how you handle that gap. You handle that gap by tolerating the situations. You handle that gap by being detached from the fruit, continuing to do what you're doing. So unless I am able to function like that in my normal worldly duties, the same thing, because the concept is the same, whether it is the normal worldly duty or whether it is bhakti, the concept is the same. There is a gap between what you believe should happen by something and actually what is happening. There is a gap between the two. I'm believing something or I think something should happen in a particular way, but there's a difference in my feeling. Okay. And especially in bhakti, it is more, because bhakti actually, if you see, it is all about your feeling, right? I mean, how bhakti is a state of consciousness. If you want to define bhakti, what is bhakti yoga? Bhakta is a state. That means somebody has become bhakta, means what? He has reached a particular state of consciousness, right? Then only he can be called as a bhakta. In fact, that feeling is his own feeling. It is his experience, right? Like once we have discussed this, Yamaraj, when he discusses with our Nachiketa, and Nachiketa asking Yamaraj about liberation and all that. At one point, Yamaraj says that, hey, Nachiketa, I can't talk much now. Now I have to stop talking and you have to start experiencing. Well, how much will I talk? Okay, because I have some experiences of bhakti. I can only tell you the process, but you have to go through that. Okay, so that gap, everybody has to slowly fill that gap, correct? And when you become like an exalted devotee or something, when you reach that state, then what you believe and what you experience becomes one. But there is a lot of time for that, right? So one has to be very, very peaceful. One has to be patient. So Nishkama Karma teaches us in a very daily life how you actually practice that, right? So again, so if you come back to the duality thing also, if you connect, duality, the principle of duality that we are discussing, and this principle of Nishkama Karma, they are connected, correct? Because so just like, I mean, if you take anybody, right, in the world, if you take anyone in the world, let me put a statement like this: if you cannot handle the opposite of what you are expecting, you cannot do what you want to do. So if you cannot handle the opposite of what you are expecting, you cannot do what you want to do. Like, for example, a businessman, right? He enters stock market. He wants to make money. Okay, so when you enter stock market to make money, you can make money or you can enter only if you can handle loss also. If you say that I cannot handle only the opposite of profit, which is loss in stock, then you cannot enter on the stock market. How is that possible? You will encounter loss. That's the principle. Even big fellows who made a lot of money in the stock market, even they made loss at some time. Okay, so why it is like that? Because the world is a place of duality. Okay, so like Kshatriya, Arjuna is a Kshatriya. If somebody wants to be a Veera Yodha, a very famous Yodha, then he has to also handle the fact that he can get Veera Mrityu also. There is a danger of getting Veera Mrityu, correct? Only a person who can handle the fact that I could get a Veera Mrityu, take the risk of fighting and thus become a Veera Yodha. Because how will you become a Veera Yodha if you are not ready to accept the possibility that Veera Mrityu also exists? Okay, so in any varna, if you see, there is this duality, whether it is Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, right? I gave an example of Vaishya first. That if you want to make business, if you start business, means you have to start business with the understanding that I can make a loss also and I should be able to handle it. Otherwise, you cannot start business. If somebody is too worried about loss, then he has to keep his money in the fixed deposit in the bank, be happy with 6% per annum, right? Because he is not willing only to take a risk. Because unless you take a risk, how can you get that 12% per annum returns? I'm talking in the modern world in the sense of, how people make money. It doesn't make sense, right? So the point is, this world is intrinsically a place of duality everywhere. Okay. So just like I was talking to a student also, he's preparing for some exam, right? So like we see many students, they take 1 or 2 years gap to prepare for IAS exam. They have to take that chance of preparing 2 years for IAS exam, understanding that there also exists a possibility they will not get IAS only at the end of it. That risk is there, correct? And if you can handle that risk, then only you should take 2 years off and keep studying for that exam. If you cannot handle that risk, then you cannot, because duality is there. Both are there, correct? So this is how duality and Nishkama Karma get connected, right? So there is duality in everything. In fact, even a Brahmana has duality. A Brahmana is behind knowledge. Okay, now this is one interesting point here, which I would like to make. Then we will go ahead in our discussion today. A Brahmana is interested in knowledge. Now, an interesting thing about knowledge is, when you are behind knowledge, then intrinsically it can make you disloyal to something that you knew before. Okay, so please try to understand this. If you are interested in understanding something more deeply, more and more, and so on, then at some point you will only intellectually face a situation where what I knew previously, that is now not correct or that is not complete. You'll have to break that understanding in order to accept this new understanding. If somebody is not ready to do that, then he cannot go behind new knowledge. Okay, so why I'm making this point also, I mean, I'm just, especially for those who are followers of ISKCON would understand this better. Sometimes in our devotee community, this fear exists that if, someone is studying something apart from Srila Prabhupada's books or something that he said, then there is a chance that he can just kind of deviate, go somewhere here, there, and so on. This fear exists among some devotees. If you think about it carefully, that fear is based on this particular point that I'm saying. Because when you try to gain knowledge, then you cannot make boundaries that I will gain knowledge only from this particular place. Knowledge is unlimited, and one may gain knowledge from so many different places. That's how an intellectual is, right? Intellectual, you cannot stop an intellectual and say that, hey, Abhi, you have to understand only from these. There is nothing else that you can accept. So then that becomes extremely, what shall I say, fanatical, as in, you cannot. So this happens sometimes with our devotee community, where what happens is, so something is there in the Shastra, right? And so let's say, Yudhishthir Maharaj gambled. Okay. Now, Srila Prabhupada gave one reason why Yudhishthir Maharaj gambled. Okay. So something he would have said in that context. But when you start reading the Shastra, then you will understand that there are many other reasons also why he gambled. Like one reason is said about Yudhishthir Maharaj, why he gambled, which is there in the Mahabharata only, that he also gambled thinking that this may be a good way to usurp all the money of Duryodhana and take it as a strategy. That this Duryodhana is a sinful person, he is keeping half kingdom with himself. Actually, everything should be with us only, so that we can rule according to dharma. So let us, do something. So there are many other reasons also. One reason is that he did not, he had taken a vow that I will obey my superiors. Yudhishthira had told that whatever my superiors say, I will always accept. Another reason is that he thought this is Krishna's plan or whatever. Now, there are so many reasons. What would have happened is our Acharya, let's say Srila Prabhupada, would have said one of the reasons. Okay. Now, if some devotee tries to find out some other reasons also, then some others, they feel very guarded. They feel that, Arey, why you're saying something that, our Acharya did not speak. Arey, but this is knowledge. This is there in the scripture. Okay. So different acharyas would have spoken different aspects of the knowledge. So what is the harm in accepting that? But then some people become very frightened because of it. So I want to say here that this is fundamentally a duality with knowledge only. That means when you want to be an intellectual, when you wish to access understanding from different places, you do run into such challenges, especially in a very institutional setup kind of, where somebody questions your loyalty and so on. Okay. So the point is, all such dualities have to be handled. Okay, that's what I'm trying to come to. So whether you're a Brahmana, whether you're a Kshatriya, whether you're a Vaishya, duality is going to be there only. Whether you're behind knowledge, whether you're behind Veera Yodha, or whether you're behind money as a Vaishya. And everything will come with its own duality. And Nishkama Karma also means here that you will have to do that without attachment to whatever bad name it brings or whatever. Because that is how it has to be done. So these two things, duality and Nishkama Karma, become connected very strongly, correct? Because so duality makes it all the more compulsion on us to do Nishkama Karma, correct? Because if duality were not there, and if only success is going to be there, then why Nishkama Karma? You can, anyway, everything is going to be very rosy and very nice. But the fact is that it's not going to be rosy. So sometimes it will be nice, sometimes it may not be nice. But still you have to continue doing. And this is the essence of the second chapter. Okay, so we are coming back to that, because that is what Ramanujacharya says in the context of this 2.48, 49, that this is the essence of the second chapter Bhagavad Gita. Correct? Because second chapter Bhagavad Gita, from beginning to end, beginning, middle, and end, it keeps hammering the same point: duality, duality, duality. Right. So it is something that is very, very strongly there, and hence, no one can kind of say that this particular thing does not exist, or I may not bother about it. Right. So I hope that point is very clear. Right. Now we are going to the last part of this particular last verse under discussion. Durena Shavaram Karma Buddhi Yoga Dhananjaya Buddho Sharanam Anvicha Kripana Phala Hetavaha. Right. So the translation is, O Arjuna, compared to the karmas performed with the understanding described earlier, the actions performed without such intellect, with just petty rewards in the mind, are far inferior. Therefore, take refuge in buddhi, aforementioned understanding about karmas. Those who perform actions with petty rewards in mind, like attaining wealth, swarga, etc., are poor. Poor as in they remain in samsara and they do not enjoy the wealth of mukti. So it's a very, very long translation which is there, but it kind of summarizes whatever we have said. Compared to the karmas performed with the understanding described earlier, means we are talking about 2.41. 2.41, Vyavasayatmika Buddhi and all that. That is that understanding. Buddhi Yoga, that is the understanding. Okay. The karma which is performed with such intellect, with which intellect petty rewards in mind, they are far inferior. That means Krishna is again hammering this point that don't be too attached to the fruits. Take refuge in buddhi, and durena shavaram karma. Durena shavaram means Ramanuja translates as inferior. Durena shavaram is very inferior. What is inferior? Being attached to the fruits is very inferior. And in this way be fixed. Okay. And in this way, actually, he concludes this section now in 2.49 ke baad. There are just 3 verses, 2-3 verses where this whole section concludes. The next verse, Krishna says, Bhukti yukto jahadiha ube sukrut duskrita dasmad yoga yujjasva yoga karmasu kaushalam. Okay, therefore, engage in yoga karmasu kaushalam. Strive for yoga, which is the art of work. Karmajam buddhi yukta hi phalam tyaktva manishini janma bandha vinirmukta padam gacchantyanamaya. In this way, one can walk away from all the miseries of material existence and obtain mukti. Yadate moha kalilam buddhi vyatitirishyati tata gantasi nirpetam shrotavyasa srutasya cha. And thus you will come out of this whole delusion of so many kamya karma fruits which are described in the sections of Vedas. And thus you attain divine consciousness. Shruti vipratipannate yadastasya nischala samadho achala buddhis tada yogam avapsisi. So this whole part was about this. And then Arjuna is asking about who is Sthita Prajna, and then Sthita Prajna is described. Okay, this part we have already done. Okay, so with this we end the day today, and we can maybe take any questions if they are there. If anybody wishes to ask something, you can please raise your hand. Hare Krishna. Any question? No comment.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam. Prabhuji, you are saying that this inability to tolerate the dualities, then we cannot go back to Krishna. And it is also said that then what about this Navavidha Bhakti, Prabhuji? So even one single anga of that Navavidha Bhakti, simply one can go back to Krishna. So when we combine...
One second, last line I didn't understand. What did you say? Navavidha Bhakti?
Navavidha Bhakti. Navavidha Bhakti, even single anga of Bhakti also, if we practice simply, we can go back to Krishna. So in that sense also, we have to connect this one, that even while practicing one anga for Navavidha Bhakti also, one need to tolerate the dualities, then only one can be eligible to go back to Krishna.
Okay, good point. See, please see what happens now. Many times, we as devotees, we have heard or understood Bhakti completely separately from the previous steps of it. See, that is why Bhagavad Gita, if you read Bhagavad Gita, na, Krishna is going to talk about this Navavidha Bhakti, correct? I mean, he doesn't say Navavidha Bhakti, but in the 9th chapter, we are going to read, right? Satatam Kirtayanto Maham, Yatantascha Vrataha. Then in the 7th chapter, he is going to say, Mam Shrunu, hear about me. Then in the 9th chapter, he says, Patram Putram, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, offer everything to me. So the components of Navavidha Bhakti, Krishna is speaking in 7th, 9th chapter, etc. But the point is, Krishna, when he speaks that in the 7th, 9th chapter, he's speaking that on top of these chapters, na? That means ये जो second chapter, third chapter, fourth chapter है, इसकी ऊपर भगवान ने उसको रखा है ना. Krishna has not removed this. So basically the understanding is that, see, please try to understand, if somebody is getting too affected by situations going around him or her, then that itself automatically means that actually becomes a fundamental disqualification, even from the perspective of how will you sit and chant peacefully. I mean, please try to understand this. If you want to sit and chant also, Navavida Bhakti you want to chant the holy name. If you are going to sit and chant, and that time you are thinking that, Array, today my favorite political party, BJP, lost against Congress in Karnataka, what is going to happen now? And you are too affected by the external dualities of the world, then how can you chant? I mean, you cannot, right? Because automatically your mind is distracted. See, please try to understand. That is why we have already done 6th chapter and all, na, Dhyana Yoga. So when can you do that Dhyana? Dhyana Yoga ka prerequisite kya hai? If you see Samatva Yoga, that means only when you can see everything Samatvam, then you can do Dhyana Yoga. Dhyana means not only the Dhyana Yoga ka dhyana. From Krishna's perspective, even Bhakti ka bhi dhyana hi hai na. Suppose you are sitting, somebody is sitting and chanting Gayatri, somebody is sitting and chanting the holy name. Okay, if you want to sit and chant the holy name with complete focus, then Samatvam should have been achieved. Because if Samatvam in some way is not achieved, and you are constantly thinking, he's my friend, he's my enemy, usko khatam karna chahiye mujhe, this person said this to me yesterday, he should die and rot in hell forever. I mean, if so much of thought process is going on in our mind, it means we have not achieved Samatva Yoga. If you have not achieved Samatva Yoga, how can you do the Anga of Bhakti peacefully? That is, and how do you achieve Samatva Yoga? To achieve Samatva Yoga, you have to practice Nishkama Karma Yoga. So you have to come back. Samatva Yoga, Krishna is speaking in the 5th chapter. But Nishkama Karma Yoga, Krishna is speaking in the 2nd chapter, 3rd chapter, correct?
Yes.
The whole point is, unless one has practiced these, one cannot. So Bhagavad Gita, if you see the flow, unless you have first practiced Nishkama Karma, you're practicing that, and unless you come to Samatva Yoga in some way where you are equipoised with friend, enemy, all these things, what Krishna is saying, then only you can do Dhyana, the 6th chapter Dhyana. Now, many times, what happens as devotee, we may think that, Arey, mere ko to dhyan karna hi nahi hai. Arey, we may not want to do the Dhyana of the impersonal meditation, but you want to do Dhyana of Krishna also, na? For that also, the prerequisites are the same only. It is not that has changed. So that is why none of these concepts get cancelled. So when we look at concepts like Navavida Bhakti and things like that, completely aloof from these things in Gita, then we end up with such an understanding where we feel iska koi maina nahi rakhta, or this is not allowed. Does that answer, Mati?
I'm not still clear, Prabhuji. I mean to say that when disturbing situations come across, some may be like getting disturbed with even single petty things also. Some will be shaken away at the peak level of issues. And you're speaking about like no samatva kind of like equiparity in like a friend and enemy kind of thing. So these are the 3 levels.
Yeah.
So that 3rd level one has to compulsorily achieve.
See, it is like this. To the degree we have achieved, to that degree our dhyana will be good. I mean, let us look at it as progressive. So it is not it is not something that only after you achieve that you have to start doing dhyana. That nobody has said. Anybody can start chanting the holy name, no matter which situation.
The more we progress.
Yeah, but the more it is, like, for example, why do we see that Rupa Goswami told Jiva Goswami that don't waste your time debating with that fellow? Why are you wasting your time debating with him, proving that you are better than him and so on? Why do you want to do that? That means you're not interested in meditation. See, that is how he concludes, right? They chastise him because he wanted to debate with that Rup Narayan or whoever. Correct. Rupa Goswami doesn't like it that Jiva Goswami wants to debate with that person. Jiva Goswami had different intention. He wanted to tell him that, hey, come on, our sampradaya is superior. But But in dhyana, that concept also, that as a sampradaya, I'm superior to you, your understanding is lesser than mine, that may be correct from a sampradayic perspective. But even that should not come. Correct?
So complete absorption in Krishna happens only when you cross all these things.
That is what. इसलिए तो ना Rupa Goswami tells Jiva Goswami that you are not fit only to do bhajan. Just move out of Vrindavan. Banish करते हैं ना उनको Vrindavan से. He goes to Mathura, sits in I mean, and then we know na Sanatan Goswami says that you are not following Jiva there, and he brings him back. I'm sure you know the story that I'm talking about.
Yes, yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. So the point is that these are all like, see, it is like if you know Carnatic music. In Carnatic music, what happens? They begin one raga and they keep taking it right to higher and higher levels. The crescendo comes at the end. Have you seen? Sometimes one song is it goes for 1 hour in Carnatic music. So initially it looks very simple and slow. Later it becomes fast, very intricate. That alap and all, and the variations. I don't know the technical terms, but it becomes very sweet and melodious at the end. Correct? So similarly, our bhakti also, in the beginning, we start something, right? We will start our chanting, everything. But these principles of Gita, unless they have come in our life, to the degree they have come, to that degree your absorption will be meaningful. And to the degree they have not come, to that degree our absorption will be distracted. At least we have to accept that fact.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Damodarashtam Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, 2 questions. First, small question is like, you said there are 3 kinds of karmas, Nityaka and Kama. So
Nityaka Kamya, not Kama, Kamya karma. Kamya means, that means the injunctions which are for desiring. Yeah.
Okay. So there are certain things which we do as an interest in our life. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, no, that you can do some poetry or astrology. All those things come under which category? And
good question. So Ramanuja says there is another 4th category that the Vedas don't tell us to do, but there is no harm in doing it. So Ramanujacharya gives an example that the Vedas will not tell you that you should go to a lake and put your foot inside the water and keep moving it. Do the Vedas say anywhere? You should go to the lake and, sit relaxed, put your feet in the water and keep moving it for 10 minutes. It doesn't say. But you can do that. There is no harm in that. So you see, the Vedas say things that are to be done. The Vedas say things that are nisheda, not to be done. And there are certain things it doesn't say anything about it. So doing that is not harmful or especially beneficial in any way. Like a simple example I gave. Correct, no? So like that, there are so many activities which may do, which are routine. So what one should be careful about is, we should not do things that the Vedas tell us one should not do. Nisheda. Like in our context, like regulative principles or whatever. Like when it is said that you cannot do it, that should not be done. And what is to be done, which the Vedas say, in terms of Nitya Naimitika Karma, that one must do. Does that make sense?
Yes, and the another question is this Nishkama element. Does it apply to all 3 kinds of karmas, or like in Kamya karma, the goal is only to achieve what I desire? So will will that element apply there also?
Yeah. So Ramanuja says that will apply to a devotee who does some Kamya karma. So sometimes a devotee may have to do a Kamya karma because of social situation. Like for example, if you're a king, like Yudhishthir Maharaj does some Ashwamedha Yajna, some Rajasuya Yajna, correct? Many of these yajnas are done with a specific fruit also to go to the heavens. But when somebody like Yudhishthir Maharaj will do that yajna, he will not do that thinking that I want heaven, that is why I'm doing. Are you getting it? So Kamya karma also can be done in a Nishkama way, he says. Okay,
but in that case, it doesn't.
Especially if social situation is such that you have to do it. Like another example which we give normally is, let us say some family is there where some Devata Puja is happening. Okay, you are a Vaishnava, but in your family some Devata Puja is happening for some material benefits. But because you're a family member, you have to participate in it. So that is a Kamya karma going on. But because that is a Kamya karma going on, you as an individual Vaishnava may not be interested in it. But then there is a social formality also that you have to sit over there. Everybody has come and so on. Right? So you can sit there in a Nishkama Bhava. Okay, so I'm sitting here out of respect for this whole Vedic process, but I personally am not sitting here with the desire that I need all these things from this. So he says that if a devotee has to do some kamya karma, which can happen sometime, do that also with the niskama bhava, then that is fine.
Okay. No, my point was like nishkam, if the nishkam element is not there, like you discussed about some examples, like if we are not ready for failure, in some point in the future, that person will stop doing that, right? If he's not ready for failure, that
He
should
cannot do that
understanding
only.
that if, huh?
He cannot do that only.
Yeah, that's what means. He will say that I did not get a result, so now I'll stop doing it. So
Yes.
it should apply to those kamya karmas also, no? Right? Means if he is doing.
Yeah. So that's what now. So see, the point here is, see, what is the difference? There are two types of people. Let us say one person is a businessman, too attached to the fruit. And when he starts, actually, even when such a businessman starts at a practical level, he starts only if he's ready to accept losses. Otherwise, he cannot start only. But then if he gets too much affected by that loss, then he cannot do only. That means if you see the psychology of a businessman, like if you compare, for example, a Marwadi guy with a Maratha fellow, okay, the Maratha fellow may not have the courage to incur a loss, or a Brahmin guy, he may not have the courage to incur loss in a business. उसका nature नहीं है, वो करेगा ही नहीं. So in a sense, what we understand is Nishkama karma is also very practical. That means only a person who is actually Nishkama, he only can actually do the work also properly. Otherwise, the other person gets too affected. Are you getting the point? In that context, I said that. In that context, I said that.
Yeah, so that means it's like applicable everywhere.
It is applicable everywhere, but the thing is, the karma yogi benefits most because with the right understanding, his performance becomes better. He's able to do a better job at it because he's detached. But the other person, because he's too attached, he can get caught up in that.
Okay. Their goals are different.
Yeah.
It's easy. Okay, thank you.
Haribo. Yes, Balram.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. So we were talking about Yamraj and Nachiketa's discussion, and that Yamraj told that now enough of talking, now you need to experience. So I think this is a concept you spoke about earlier, technical reality versus devotional reality. Is that same thing? And how do we understand in our life and when we read the scripture? So like when we hear the story of Lord Ram making Vibhishan as the king of Lanka as soon as he comes to surrender. So one way of looking at it is because now he's surrendering to Lord Ramchandra, and so now he's making him the king. But at the other, so this might be a devotional reality. But the technical reality may be that, see, he did not make Hanuman or Angad as the king of Lanka, even though they surrendered to him. But because Vibhishan was a rightful ruler of that piece of land, and he was always following Dharma, so that is a technical reality. He was made as the king not because he surrendered to Lord, but because he was the rightful heir to the throne. So like how do we? So many times I get confused that okay, is this a technical reality being spoken about, or is a devotional reality being spoken about now? And how do I apply in my life? Because when a devotional reality is being spoken about, and if I apply it as a technical reality, and it doesn't meet my expectation of feeling and experience, then it causes confusion, and as you were saying, aspiration and expectation doesn't get met. So how do we practically, like when we are reading scriptures, when we are hearing lectures, how do we decipher the difference between, okay, this is devotional reality, I should take it as an experience, and this is a technical reality, I should apply this in my life?
Many times what happens, these things get merged up actually. Like in the example that you're giving, it becomes both in a way. Because technically also, Vibhishan only is the next person, right, who will rule. Once Ravan is killed, who's going to be the next king over there? So technically this person only has to become. Or when Vali is killed, technically the next person to become is Sugriv. Hanuman or Angad cannot become the king over there. So there is a technical reality there, but then that technicality is accompanied by the devotion also. Because Ram is, wanting to reciprocate with his devotee. Now he reciprocates with different devotees differently. With Hanuman, he gave him a hug and embrace. And he said that, what more can I do, Hanuman, to you? You have given me the good news of finding Sita. The only thing I can give you is an embrace. And he embraces him. Okay. So, I mean, technically, if you look, maybe a kingdom is more valuable than an embrace. Because somebody may say, "Arey kya embrace mein kya rakha hai?" But then from a devotional perspective, these are all ways of reciprocation. You show love in different ways. Okay. To one person, Ram is showing love by just embracing him. There is nothing else he could give. He cannot make him a king anywhere. So he just embraces him. And another place, he's showing love by giving him a kingdom itself. Okay. So it becomes connected. And that is why we know that commentary also. When somebody is asking Ram, "Arey, you made him, then if Ravan surrenders, then what will you do?" So he says, "I will make him king of Ayodhya." Then what about Bharat? You have given him. Then he says, "I will make him king of Vaikunta. And I will just be a servant of all three of them." Right? So there is this additional commentary from some Acharya that because Ram made Vibhishan in advance, so what if Ravan would have surrendered? Then, So that technicality is accompanied by the devotional things only. So my point is also that devotional realities in our scriptures, they are never so aloof from technicality also. It takes care of that technicality most of the time. You will see that carefully. Matlab, the devotional part that is mentioned is not, it's not that anything can be mentioned, right? So there are certain things which are taken into account when they say something. Like we see everywhere, like Narsimhadev is killing Hiranyakashipu, and then he's telling Prahlad that, "Chalo, come on, do Shraddha and do everything, do the rituals for your dead father." He's bringing a very, very technical point over there. Such a wonderful pastime has happened. Lord has come and ripped apart Hiranyakashipu, and so many wonderful prayers have happened. And Hiranyakashipu is already given liberation also. But still, Narasimhadev is bringing him back to certain technical things about the world, saying that you have to do the Shraddha for your father and so on and so forth. So I think our scriptures, they actually integrate everything very nicely. We only have to see that, and we need not. Sometimes we may be tempted to, see things too much differently. But I believe that seeing it more integrated, connecting everything together, becomes more realistic.
So in continuation to that, like yesterday, I posted that question around that Samudra Manthan Leela, where this verse says that the devotees, without much effort, without much hard work, they get results which are much more expected, much more from their expectation. Now, this itself raises the expectation, isn't it, from the devotee's perspective? And then when we don't meet in the world, because that doesn't get met, because even Prabhupada in that purport he's mentioning that you see that we have spent 8 to 10 years only in ISKCON, and we from 40 rupees it has become 40 crore rupees. So Krishna has given much more than what we expected. But if you see from a perspective that Prabhupada actually worked so hard for that,
Yes.
and even
That is the
before,
point.
yeah.
Actually, there is a lot of hard work. See, I wanted to tell that also when you asked that question. I mean, where is a devotee not working hard? If you see Arjuna, he's called as Gudakesha. He's not sleeping at night, and he's not sleeping at night because he has to complete his rounds at night or something. He's not sleeping at night because he's practicing archery at night. Are you getting it? So it is not that Arjuna became the great Dhanurdhar just like that. I mean, how much he practiced? He practiced more than any of the people. That is what Dronacharya also says, to Arjun, that you are the best student. You are working more harder than anybody, and you are more talent also. Not just talent, hard work also Arjuna had, right? So I think, and even like as you're rightly saying, Prabhupada also, he worked very hard. It's not easy to run an organization like that. It's phenomenal.
So then when we hear this statement, that okay,
statement is, you have to take it in that sense that, see, a devotee gives that whole credit to Krishna. Devotee doesn't feel that because I worked hard, I got something. Like somebody like Prabhupada, he may have worked very hard, but he will, or any devotee for that matter, Arjuna is working very hard, but he will not think that because I worked hard, I got. His devotional feeling is that, oh Lord, it's your grace that all this happened in my life. See, and that feeling is a very genuine feeling. See, the problem is if you get too much technicalities in your life, then the devotional outpour cannot come. See, for the devotional outpour to spring, it has to go beyond technicality. So if somebody is always thinking, if Arjuna is thinking, I worked hard, so I won the war. Krishna ne kya kiya mere liye? Kuch nahi kiya. Then you lose that whole gratitude and that love only for God. Correct. So because another part of the technical reality we all know from Bhagavad Gita, that you are not the doer. The modes of material nature are only doing everything, and the modes of material nature are controlled by Krishna. So that way, if you see who is the doer, I'm not doing anything. It is Krishna only who is acting through my body, correct? So I'm saying that if you go too much in the technical analysis also, you will end up with this understanding only. Okay. And then when you go to the devotional platform, then you cannot say that I did work, so I got. So devotee, see, who is a devotee? He does great work, prayatna, but then whatever happens, he completely offers that to Krishna. He says it is because of you only that it happened. I did not do anything. That is what a devotee genuinely feels. It's not that he's doing a drama. He actually starts feeling like that, right? Because of his gratitude to God. So there it all gets mixed up again. So if you look at that statement very technically and think that अरे भैया काम के बिना इसको फल कहाँ से आया, then that whole thing falls apart, because we have missed that mood over there, right? That mood is that I have done nothing. It is only God's grace that all this happened. Are you seeing that point?
Yes, yes. So basically here when we read this verse, so it's like more of a devotional feeling, the devotional outpour of the demigods and Srila Prabhupada in the purport that is coming out. But it doesn't cancel the learning of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says that you have to work and tolerate the dualities and be equal in your.
In fact, it reinforces that, right? Because Krishna, what he says in the Gita is, you are not the doer only. So even if I have done hard work, I have not done anything. I mean, if you go back to 5th chapter Bhagavad Gita, even a devotee does hard work. It is the modes of nature which are doing the work, right? You are just a witness. You are allowing the body to do things. Okay, I am allowing my body to sleep early, rise early, do Mangalarti or whatever, correct? Ultimately, it is Krishna only who is the master of everything, Prakriti.
So, but if in any new person who reads this verse, he can quote this verse and become laxed. But when we understand the context, that
No,
the
so
demigods,
you can't read this verse without reading Bhagavad Gita. See, Bhagavatam is not to be read only without reading Gita. Na? Bhagavatam is on top of Bhagavad Gita.
yeah.
सर्वधर्मान परित्यज्य से शुरू हो रहा है ना भागवतम, and सर्वधर्मान परित्यज्य is based on all this.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. I have one more question. So second chapter is considered as the essence of the contents of Bhagavad Gita summarized. So this question is troubling me, that Krishna knows Arjuna in and out. That he knows what is Arjuna's capacity, what is his level of intellect. Then why Krishna is not like why Arjuna remains confused even at the end of chapter 2, when Krishna has already summarized all the contents? Is it something lacking on Krishna's side, that he has to explain it all over again? Why he could not do the job at the first go itself and explain the way Arjuna wanted? Why Arjuna remained confused? The question is really troubling. Yeah.
I mean, we can look at it at multiple levels. At one level, we can understand that Arjuna, I mean, from an Adi Devika platform, we can understand that Arjuna remained confused so that we get clarity. Because if Arjuna understands everything in 2 verses only, then we don't have any Bhagavad Gita to discuss and understand. Because ordinary people need more time to understand. So that is one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it, which Ramanujacharya and Vedanta Desikan say, is that in the second chapter, when Krishna started talking about Karma Yoga as a means to success, Arjuna also started thinking, hey, what is this? How can just by Karma Yoga, so this whole idea of, Karma Yoga as a concept, which Krishna starts speaking in the second chapter, needed more elaboration even for Arjuna. That is what Desikan writes, because it was not, because this concept itself sometimes takes time for people to digest. How can you work in the world and in that work itself connected to divinity? Because most of us, we disconnect work and divinity. We think that ye to material hai, work hai, and divinity to kuch alag hi hai. So the whole concept of Karma Yoga, he says, is actually much more difficult to understand than even the head topics of Bhagavad Gita. Because bhakti is in some ways more easier to understand. कि भाई सब छोड़ो, भगवान का नाम जप करो, you will reach him. But to talk about karma yoga as an offering, it needs a lot of elaboration. So that's another reason they say. But of course, fundamentally, we know that all this was a drama for our sake. But the point is, all the concepts Krishna has spoken in the second chapter only, what he's speaking ahead. But it needed elaboration. So that is why all the chapters come. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hare Hare Bol.